All right, so today we're going to talk about test request forms. We added test request forms as a way for our clients to track internal requests from the sensory and consumer insights departments. Right, so a lot of companies have, typically it's R&D people, but it can really be anybody who requests tests directly from the sensory and consumer insights departments. And typically that can be done through a different computer system. Most often what we found is that it's done through Excel documentation where somebody fills out a form, they send it to sensory and consumer insights, and those sensory and consumer insights people then type in all of the information associated with that test. So really double work is being done. On the front end, that R&D person is typing in all of the information about their test into an Excel document. Then that Excel document is being transferred to the sensory and consumer insights person, where they are then typing that information into RedJade. Okay, so what we've done is we've automated that process, and I'm going to walk you through that. So one thing you will notice is you will see that I have two windows open. I have my account. This is my typical demo account that you may have seen before. And behind it, I have this Steve Requester Willis account. Okay, so this Requester Willis account is going to be acting as my R&D person. And you'll see that this account will be acting as my sensory and consumer insights person. Okay, so the difference, Swillis at redjade.net, Swillis888 plus Gmail at redjade.net, right? So you can see I'm functioning as two completely different people within the application. All right, so first, let's show you how you actually set up that new user, right? So I'm logged in as myself, the sensory and consumer insights person who has admin rights to RedJade. I'm going to click on the admin step. And from here, I can go ahead and add new users. So on the left-hand side, I can click users. And from here, I can create a new user, right? So I would type in the email address. And the only access I would want to give this user is project requester access. Okay, so you're giving them very limited RedJade access. All of you on the phone, if you were not involved in the negotiations around RedJade, you have unlimited simultaneous users in the application. There is never a limit to the number of people that can access RedJade at any one time. Feel free to add these project requesters. There will be no cost to you whatsoever. Okay, just to be very clear and transparent on that. All right, so once you invite that requester person, they can set that up, and you'll see what happens is this person, right, my requester person, has very limited access within RedJade, right? Now, the one thing that you're going to want this requester to do is in their admin section, they're going to want to do two things. One, they're going to want to add the sensory and consumer insight approvers, the people who can approve a test request, to their team, right? So you can see here, I have added myself, my regular account, to my team, right? And I'll show you how that works in a couple of minutes here. Okay, the other thing they're going to want to do is in their profile, they're going to want to click on notifications, and they're going to want to set up their notifications for project requests. Okay, and there's two ways that you can set up those notifications. You can set them up for in-app, which this little bell will have a little indicator that you have in-app notifications. And I think email is a great way to set it up, because then you don't have to be proactive looking for a comment in RedJade. RedJade will automatically send a comment out in an email if you choose email. So you can do one and or both. If you're only doing one, I recommend email. It's a more proactive approach to getting notifications within the application. Okay, so you're going to want to make sure the person sets up their notifications and adds you to their team. Okay, and you can just talk to them about that. Okay, now on my side, I'm also going to make sure that my profile has myself set up for notifications as well. Okay, so project request comments and project request status change are set up as email and in-app as well. Okay, so now we added a few things to RedJade that I have shown throughout the webinars off and on that I'm going to walk through now, which is how do you set up RedJade so that your test request form and your sample form match or mimic that request form that you're currently filling out in Excel. And we've added some features and functionality around that so that you can easily do so within the system. So to do that, you have to be a company admin. And from here, I'm going to click on settings on the left-hand side so you can see I'm in admin. I'm going to click settings. And if you go to the right here, you have these custom fields, sample form, and project request form. Okay. So I'm going to click on custom fields. Custom fields are where you can add any field that you would like to either exist in the sample form or a project request form. Any field that you would like to exist in either one of those forms, you add it here first. Okay. And so you'll notice that I have things like heating temperature, meat type, area of store. These are more sample related information, right? I have conditional forms where it's what section, what area of the store, and depending on what area of the store, they'll get different choices, right? Below that, I have test request information that is customizable and is set for me, right? So I have test background is a text area. Desired test date is a date type of field. Objective is a drop-down menu, right? Recruiting criteria, so on and so forth. You guys can read this just as easily as I can. But the idea here is that you're customizing that field so that it automatically shows up when the developer goes, when the R&D person goes to fill out the test request form. Okay, so you want to think through creating your sample, your custom fields, and then you have your sample form, right? Sorry, one more thing on custom fields. You'll notice that if you have a variable here and you add it to your sample form, that becomes a variable that is available to you immediately in your survey designer area. Okay, so let's go ahead. Our sample form, I've gone ahead and I've customized this. Area of store. Now I've made everything optional because I'm always doing demos and having me type a lot is not super impressive. So I've made everything optional, but you can make it required. And you can customize your fields so they look nice on the screen by setting a width, etc. here as well. Okay. The project request form functions in two places. The project request form, if you go to create a new project yourself, you will see the same settings as if you go to do a project request form as well. So I've added test background. And again, I've made these all optional, but you can make them required. Okay. So, and this is going to change both my project requests moving forward and me setting up a new project. All right. So let's go ahead and do this. So we've set this all up. Now I'm going to go back to my project requester. And from here, I'm going to click on the R. So this is my project requester with very limited RedJade access. I click on the R, and now I'm going to click on projects. Okay. So this requester, right, has very limited access. They see only project requests. So you can see that requester Willis, who I have named this person, has done this test request. Let's go ahead and create a new request. So this person is going to create a request, and you'll see that they're going to fill out the details and samples, and then they're going to review what they've done and send it to the people on their team who can approve the project. So from here, I'm going to call this RedJade Review Webinar. The description is, let's look at some new cool functionality. The background is we want to be better than competition, right? And our objective is to be significantly better liked than competition. We can put in a desired test date. This doesn't mean that that desired test date is going to be met, but it lets the sensory and consumer insights team know when product will be available, right? So you might change this, instead of desired test date, it might be date products will be available to test, right? Recruiting criteria, you could say, you know, likers and users of ice cream, right? And then we would click next. Our next step is to put in our sample details, right? So again, what's nice here is I'm not entering all my sample details in Excel, and then the person on sensory and consumer insights has to transfer them. Typically, sensory and consumer insights has fewer people involved in it, right? And your time is stretched and you have a hard time getting your job done in a day. These are things that can easily be helped. The R&D person is already entering that data once. Why not have them enter it directly into RedJade for you so that you're not repeating this process, right? So let's go ahead and put in our sample. So this will be sample A. I'll say this is current ice cream, right? We can say this is frozen and it's ice cream, so on and so forth. We can put in here and we'll say it has, you know, chocolate chips, right? Now, once I click add, you'll see that if I click on this sample, I can actually copy the sample. So we've made it easy for the product developers, and this is available on your screens too, to copy their samples, right? So they can go ahead and copy it. This is sample B, and this isn't current ice cream. This is, you know, test plus 10% sucrose, whatever it is, right? And we can put in all of our samples here, and we can copy, so on and so forth, okay? All right, so let's go ahead now and click the next button, and now we can review our setup, right? So we have our project information at the top, RedJade review webinar. Let's look at new functionality, better than competition. Okay, that looks good. You can look at the calendar, right? So if I click on view calendar, that's going to show me a calendar for my site, what's set up when, so that I have an idea of when my products may be able to be tested. Okay. From here, if I scroll down, you can see I have my sample information. I can add attachments, right? And I can even leave a comment. This might say, hey, sensory team, we are looking to test our new ice creams next week. I would say Thursday or Friday to be safe on product arrival, right? Then what we're going to do is we're going to send this, right? We're going to send this and we're going to submit our results. You'll see that our team will be notified of our request, right? And then what happens is on the other side here, what will happen from here is if I go back to my requester, sorry, my approver screen, if I click on the R for my home screen, and I go into projects, right? You'll see I also have a, right, requester Willis has changed the status. That was from yesterday. These, I think it goes and gathers, Chris, is it every 5 minutes it sends the updates, I think?
Yeah, I believe it's every 5 minutes on the 5 minute.
Yeah, so it'll send the new information, the emails, etc. on the 5 minutes. But from here, you'll see I have a different screen. I have this view request screen. So if I click view requests, I can go directly into my RedJade review webinar, right? So I can click here. I click on the project and I can walk through the details, or I can just go to review, right? And I can read through this, right? It says, hey, sensory team, here's all the information. And you might say, hey, need more info about projects, right? And you can click save and exit and not approve it, or you can click submit, and that's going to turn this request into a project, right? So I go ahead and I click approve, and now I can go ahead and start making my test out of this, right? So I click acceptance, webinar, right? And you'll see I'll exit out of here really quickly. But now if I go to my dashboard, you'll see that I have converted this to a project. My samples are already all included. and I can go ahead and start building out my project the way that you typically would. Could you show us again the calendar? So I hope that showed the calendar. That's the same calendar view that you would get as you're setting up a test, except for you can't click on it. It is read only. Limit to custom fields? No, there's not. Is there a way to run a hard copy? We just talked about that. Can you delete all of the fields that are not necessary? No, you can't delete them. You can archive them. So you can only archive information because it's still stored on that test, right? So what you don't want to do is start deleting and then all of a sudden realize that you wish you would have kept that information. So we allow you to archive so it doesn't show up. We don't allow you to delete. You'll notice in RedJade there's very little deleting. That's because your data is connected in multiple different areas, and deleting fields, deleting projects, deleting analyses, etc., leads to a big jumbled mess of data in the end. So our goal here is to eliminate that jumbled mess and to allow you to have information available should you need it at a later date. If you have a text area within custom fields, can you add a web address? Absolutely. You can also add attachments if you want to as well, right? So text fields are exactly that, text fields. If you want to put a URL in the text fields, you can absolutely do that. Protocols, yes, protocols can just be uploaded into manage attachments. Can requesters go back and modify the information once the request is made? Not once the request is submitted. Chris, I'll let you answer that one. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so they can view the request. Why don't you go into your other window, Steve? If they go to the dashboard, the projects dashboard, projects list. Yeah. So you'll see here that the request is listed here still, and you'll see that the status shows that it's approved. They can click edit and review the information again. They can submit a comment if they wanted to, but at this point, the request is submitted. So it'd be advised that the requester actually contact whoever the approver was to coordinate any changes thereafter. But they could come in here and submit comments. The comments would send us a notification if they did in fact want to make changes.
Yep. Here. Can you schedule recruitment, fieldwork, and deliverable dates? So if I understood, you cannot schedule a hypothetical project. So the request, I want to be really clear about scheduling and in which side. Just one second. Okay, so if you schedule recruitment, fieldwork, and dates, so what you're really doing here, so let's try to be clear about who we're acting like, right? So the requester is, all the requester is doing is requesting this test from the Sensory and Consumer Insights department, right? So they're filling out the information that they know about the project. So what are the goals of the project? What's the background? Why am I requesting this test? Then they fill out the samples. I'm including these 3, 4, 5 samples, right? And I'm setting a target test date. That's all the person requesting the test is doing. And you can set up any information you want that requester to fill out. That is up to you. We do not limit you on the number of fields you can have them fill out. We do not tell you what fields are required, what fields are optional. You set that test up however it works best for you and your organization, right? Actually scheduling the test, the recruit, deliverables, etc., that is up to the person with considerably more RedJade access. So the test requester has very limited RedJade access. You, as the person who is managing these tests, has significantly more access. You schedule the actual test date. You schedule when you want to start recruiting. You schedule when products should arrive, etc. Okay, so I hope that answers the question that was asked. If the project is canceled, can you update the request to show it is canceled? I think you would just leave a, go ahead, I'll let Chris answer again.
So there's a couple things here. One, a request can be archived. So if you scroll to the top of the review form, Steve, there's an archive button. So let's say you submit this request and it has not been approved yet. You can come in here and essentially redact it. I would probably send a comment saying, hey, we're going to cancel this request. Then you can click archive. It'll take it off the list. You can get back to it if you want to by showing archived. but in essence, it will remove the request from the queue. Once the project has been approved, I think the request would archive, but I think the project would have already been created. So again, similar to making edits to your request, I would send a comment and coordinate the cancellation directly with the approver. And then you can also archive it here, and then the approver can archive the project that was converted from the request.
Yep. And you'll see that you're getting notifications, right?
Yeah.
In here as well. So they're getting, right? So they scheduled the test for one day on 4/23/2020. Right, so you can see that here as well. And these people will be getting emails back and forth. So no, you don't need to. So if you want to see historic requests, sorry, I'm answering like everybody can see the emails. So if you want to see historic requests, all of the requests show up in this list, and you can of course sort them by date.
And as he mentioned, or as I mentioned, if you click on the horizontal dots in the top right corner, you can choose to view archive. So this canceled request, let's say you canceled something and then 2 weeks later it comes back to fruition. Instead of recreating it, you can just unarchive it if you wanted to and resubmit the request. The project managers, the people that receive the requests, they can also view the project request list. Steve, why don't you jump over to your other window?
Sorry, I wasn't listening to what you said. I was reading the next question.
Yeah, if you jump back. So go to your projects dashboard here. So as the person that sets up the project, the Sentry team person, they can also click on the view request button in the top right corner. Oh, back to your list, sorry. They can click on view requests in the top right corner. And they can also see a list of requests that have been submitted to them as well if they wanted to look at the requests that have been sent to them.
So the next question would the request go to a sort of report creating form in the future? Sooner than you think is the answer to that question. We're actually working on a custom executive summary report today, and hopefully in the middle of May we will have that available, where you basically click a button and you'll be able to build out a form including information off the requests, summary information. It will not be plots. I just want to be clear to everybody on the phone. There won't be plots in that executive summary, but it'll be more of an actual executive summary that you'll be able to share internally and externally, as well as PDF that document for sharing as well. But that is in the works and should be done hopefully in the next 4 to 5 weeks. Are you considering having dashboards? I'm not quite sure. You know, dashboards mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. So I'm assuming you mean some sort of way of summarizing a lot of information together. We've talked about having dashboards. The problem is everybody will want something different. And when people want things different, it becomes harder to customize. So that is something that we'll probably have in the future, but I wouldn't look for it soon. We would prefer to focus on adding more analyses and reporting capabilities, etc. Those are our higher priority. So things like turf analysis, more detailed data analysis, max diff, conjoint, summary reports, etc. are significantly higher priority for us than a dashboard. The dashboard is, I mean, the summary page that you can look at here gives you a pretty quick overview of what's going on in the system. But yes, we have talked about it for recruiting and for projects, to answer your question more succinctly. Any other questions?